Hello, it's as you were at the top of the table with the top three all winning. Aston Villa victorious on Sunday by 2 goals to 1 against Manchester United. To look back, myself, Mark Donaldson, joined by Janusz Mihalik and by Rob Dawson. Janusz, let's start with you. This was the Morgan Rogers Golasso show with a couple of goals. Manchester United weren't bad today, but weren't clinical enough. Did Villa deserve their win?
No, probably not. That's usually at this stage we're hammering Manchester United at this point because it's another loss and all that, and I'm sure we'll get to that as well because a loss is a loss. But I mean, Manchester United played well in this game. I mean, Villa were horrible, I thought. But here's the problem with Manchester United, right? Even when they're playing well, and they did, missing a lot of players for sure, losing Bruno Fernandes. I thought that second half was going to be even worse, but it wasn't. But Villa found a way. So depending on which way you want to look at, I look at Aston Villa, who have now won, I think, like 11 of the last 12, maybe 7 straight games, third place, and in a title race to agree. We have to say that. We can argue if they are worthy of it or not, but they're 3 points within Arsenal. And for Manchester United, I think it's one of those games where if you're neutral, you feel for them a little bit because they did not deserve to lose this one.
It's my job as someone that has no friends to know things that I should know. 10 wins in a row is the most they've had since 1914 when they had 11 wins in a row. How did they do it today, Rob?
Well, I mean, Yanis has just hit the nail on the head there. That they found a way. That they've got a guy in Morgan Rogers who's probably in the form of his life, who is looking at being England's star man at a World Cup next summer, and he's playing like it. There was twice on the ball. The first one, really, I mean, he has really no right to even fashion himself a shooting chance when he gets the ball right on the touchline. But he's so direct and his quality is so good that he drives inside, and the finish is unbelievable. I mean, the second one is identical a little bit. It's a little bit closer in, but still from driving in from the left-hand side onto his right foot and curls it in the far corner. Ultimately, Villa have had the best player on the pitch today in Morgan Rogers, and he's decided that game. Villa found a way. United are struggling to find a way at the moment to win games. Nothing really is coming very easy for them. Villa just seem like they're in that kind of purple patch where things come off and things happen for them, and you kind of have to ride that wave for as long as possible. And right now, that's where Villa are, and United are at the other end of the spectrum. Just that things aren't coming off, things aren't particularly working, and even a day where they've played quite well. They're dealing with an awful lot of players being missing. I think United fans who travelled to Villa Park today will have done so with quite a lot of trepidation about what might happen. They will be pleasantly surprised at the performance, probably, but not the result, because it's same old. It's another defeat.
Janusz, we talk in various leagues about title contenders, and teams that are title contenders get 3 points when maybe they're not at their best. Maybe you need to ride a bit of luck as well, because Cunha's got a free header and he's got to score, and he doesn't. And if he does, then we're maybe sitting here and Villa haven't won. But they did, and there's 3 points between the top three. Are Villa serious title contenders?
As I've said, looking at the table and what they're doing lately, you have to consider them. I think, the depth of squad is a worry, right? I think in general, if you look at Villa and where Unai Emery is, it's quite incredible. It really is incredible, because if you look at their financial problems they've had, who they lost before the season, Leon Bailey, and I think a player to Newcastle United, and really Gasson was the only player that they've gotten. They had a terrible start to the season for the most part. Morgan Rogers was, by the way, one of them. He had a very difficult start to the season, and look where Unai Emery has gotten him. He's clearly a boss, as we've read in many articles in terms of who runs the club. He's a little bit of a Sir Alex Ferguson of old for Manchester United. He has the ultimate say. He's the ultimate motivator, and he did that today because, as I've mentioned, I watched him closely. Not that he's any different any other game, but it's a quality of his, how he gets his team going. He's seen what was happening today, and I think he's just willed the team, or the team willed itself, to get points. But as I've said, look, if Aston Villa are not title contenders, they'll have a say about the title. And it may happen very, very soon because they have Chelsea and Arsenal away. And with the reemergence of Manchester City, I think Liverpool are going to see this as an opportunity to get themselves back in the race. They're already there. And as bad as they were recently, at least they're not losing. They're getting wins. So Villa is going to have an enormous say over the festive period in terms of that title race. But ultimately, I think if you look at them, they're just short, right? They're short 2 or 3 players of real quality that can maybe see them through.
Rob, I'm just looking at Villa's start to the season. You know what football fans are like. We're all the same. Oh, but if we'd done that, or we won that, or we hadn't maybe dropped points there, look where we could be now. But what about this for a start to the season? 0-0 with a man sent off against Newcastle, lost 1-0 at Brentford, thumped 3-0 at home by Palace, drew 0-0 at Everton. You'll have noticed they haven't scored yet. They got their first goal at Sunderland. It was only a draw, though, and they couldn't beat 10 men. What's the difference between then and now for Aston Villa?
Well, I mean, that's the golden question. I mean, I would suggest there was a little bit of hangover from a difficult summer that Villa had. Obviously, you have to look also the way that they finished last season. They missed out on Champions League football on the last day of last season at Man United, ironically, in a game that they should have won and didn't. I think probably Villa fans were expecting more of an investment over the summer that just never came, partly because of PSR rules in this country. You know, it just doesn't allow upstart clubs essentially to pile loads of money into the squad. You need to be very kind of clever with the deals that you do. You need to bring money in. You need to do deals for academy graduates to kind of boost your PSR position. And it was a difficult summer for Aston Villa. You know, there was also part of a hangover from last season in the way that Unai Emery, I think, managed his squad towards the end of last season. You will remember that players like Ollie Watkins, who have been massive parts of what Villa have done over the last few years, was sidelined a little bit because Emery wanted to pick Marcus Rashford, and who would come in on loan in some of the big games towards the end of last season. The Champions League games, knockout games against PSG, it was Watkins who was on the bench and Rashford who was playing. There was a suggestion that players like Watkins and you know, Morgan Rogers weren't particularly happy with some of that, and there was a little bit of a hangover at the start of the season. All you can say, though, is that they've come out of that fantastically, because it's very easy in the Premier League to go from 3 games without a win to 5 to 10 to 15, and then all of a sudden you're nowhere near the European places. You're actually looking the other way and thinking there is a possibility you could get dragged into a relegation scrap. You know, the Premier League is that tough. So, you know, credit to Unai Emery for lifting those players. Credit to the players for lifting themselves, recovering from what was a pretty disastrous start, really, to not only get themselves back into a respectable position, but get themselves right back at the top of the table. And right now, you know, I'm the same as Janusz. I don't see Villa as genuine title contenders right now. But the table doesn't lie. I mean, we're not 10 games in. We're nearly halfway through the season, and Villa are right up there. So, you know, who knows? You know, the Premier League have thrown up stranger champions than Aston Villa. You just have to look at Leicester. So it can be done. And you never know. Villa do have, if they can keep picking their best 11 and can avoid serious injuries, you know, maybe they add a few in January. Who knows?
Just thinking, Janusz, a 5 or double Villa for the Premier League and Hearts for the Scottish Premiership might make you kind of rich. Just throwing that in there, or anything timely. Yeah. Here's one for you, Janusz. You've got probably Saka on the right, Rashford on the left, behind Kane up top. Is your 10 Morgan Rogers in this form? Is it Cole Palmer? Is it Jude Bellingham? Is it Eze? Is it Foden? Who is it?
I think Thomas Tuchel has been pretty clear, right? And he's been very, very consistent. And, you know, when Thomas Tuchel says things, they usually go that way. I'm not saying that he's always right, but he's been consistent in who plays, you know, and behind there are no questions in terms of Declan Rice and Elliot Anderson. And at the moment, Morgan Rogers, not only for country, but for a club, proves that he's the man, right? I mean, this is 4 goals in 2 games. I mean, he just had 2 goals against West Ham last time out, and 2 wonderful, wonderful goals coming from the left-hand side, right, here against Manchester United. So, you know, it's always about here and now. He's obviously contributing, but, you know, Thomas Tuchel, even if Morgan Rogers was to drop off just a little bit, you know, his job is to make sure that his players contribute during the time that they're with England. And I think, you know, even with a drop of form, Thomas Tuchel is going to give him an opportunity, give him a chance. So obviously there's still a few games in March for England, and there's going to be probably something in May as well. But at this moment, it's not a question, and I have no doubt about that because Thomas Tuchel told me so.
First time a Villa player has scored 2 or more goals in back-to-back games since November 1998 and Dion Dublin. Okay, Manchester United. The difference, Rob, between United with Bruno Fernandes and without Bruno Fernandes is what?
Well, I mean, they just can't do without him, is a simple way of putting it. I mean, you can argue about his quality as much as you like, and there is a bit of a debate among United fans about what kind of qualities he brings to the team and whether he is, that kind of world-class midfielder that, some United fans think that he is. What you can't argue against is his commitment to the cause and what he does to the other 10 players that are on the pitch. I mean, he just doesn't miss games. I was looking during the game, we missed 2 games with a knee injury in May 2024. He missed another game in March 2022 because he was ill. And since he's been at Man United, that's it. He hasn't missed any other games because of injury or illness, aside from the odd suspension here or there. United they just don't have the players to be able to cope with him missing any length of time. Ruben Amorim is already without Ahmad and Brian Mbeumo and Mazraoui because they're at the Africa Cup of Nations. That's essentially the entire right side of his best team. Ahmad and Mbeumo are 2 of his best players, bar none. They are the 2 really that make things happen down that right-hand side. If you take Bruno Fernandes out of that as well, he has got some serious problems in the next few weeks. I was actually surprised, like Janusz, I was surprised at how well United managed to cope in the second half. I think that was probably part down to Lisandro Martinez playing as a holding midfield player, a job that he hasn't done since he was at Ajax before he even signed for Man United. He looked quite comfortable in there. But just looking forward at their fixtures now, United have got Newcastle on Boxing Day. They've got a home game against Wolves. And then they've got a game against Leeds away from home in early Jan. United just cannot cope with having this number of players missing. Throw into that De Ligt and Maguire, probably 2 of United's starting back 3. Ruben Amorim has got serious problems with his squad at the moment. It's just not deep enough to be able to cope with this number of players missing. And the danger for him now is that results spiral a little bit. They have kind of been on the edge a bit with results. There've been some good performances, some not so good. Games they should have won, games that they deserve to lose. It has really been on a knife edge. And if you take out some of his best players, it could spiral in the way that we saw at the back end of last season. And that's just not what he needs right now, because ultimately he is under pressure.
Yeah, and look, he never knew, even when he had everybody, who his best team was. That's the problem, right? We were just talking about Unai Emery. The difference is vast here. You look at Aston Villa, who have a lot of stability in terms of how they play, in terms of changes and who plays. I think with United, it was never the case. Of course, now it's easy to say that key players are out, and it's impossible to replace somebody like Bruno Fernandes. Now the United fans truly will see what it means without him. Although I will say, because you could see it in the second half, that I think the bonus is that Mateus Cunha, who's been playing better, is going to be the Bruno Fernandes. He actually did that a little bit in the second half, where he was dropping even deeper. He was the one that I think is going to fancy himself in terms of taking that responsibility at least. But then you're missing him higher up the pitch, right? So now you're asking Mason Mount to give you even more, and I suppose Šeško or Zirkzee are going to be the ones. Cunha had that sitter, right, with the header. Could have been much different if he scores that away, and he should have scored that. So, but the issues here are all over the place, right? And I'm not going to give the manager an out here because the players are out. I really am not, because teams go through this. Hey, Rob, remember, I think, am I remembering this correctly, that, Sir Alex Ferguson would never get any players that played in African Cup of Nations for that reason alone, because you don't want to be losing your best players in the most important part of the season, which is the festive season. Now that's all going to change, right? Because they're going to every 4 years, some new competition. I forget what it is. But, that's why I'm not going to give Amorim an out in this one. The schedule is okay. Newcastle and Wolves at home. They've got to take advantage of that because they're not all that far from it. But it's going to be difficult simply because United at the moment are not a good team, and I don't think Amorim is a good manager. And remember, I was very happy when he first came in. I thought he was going to do the job. I was all behind him. I've lost faith a long time ago. So yeah, this is going to be difficult. And watching today, Uarte, my goodness, I almost felt bad for him. He was that bad as well. And Casemiro, last game, I mean, that's criminal what he did with that yellow card. Although, I mean, what's Casemiro's going to do? Unless United are on top of the game and carry the game, Casemiro's okay going forward. If pressure comes in, he's not good enough to be there. What is too low?
It's Leeds and Burnley away after their two festive fixtures. So they've got 4 games in quick succession. And Rob, with a hamstring injury, just thinking back to Gyökeres, who picked up a similar type of injury, nothing too serious, but enough. That was against Burnley recently, and he was out for a month. Are we looking, again, I know it's easy and to say right now to suggest it's going to be a certain time frame, but are we looking a similar time frame to Gyökeres for a mild hamstring in about a month?
I mean, yeah, it doesn't look good. The way he pulls up, it's always a warning sign. If they pull up kind of on the ball, it makes it look probably as bad as it can be. In fairness to him, he did stay on for a little bit. Yeah, I think there was a suggestion at the time that he should have come straight off, but almost immediately after, it's his job to take the corners, and he told Mason Mount to go and take the next corner. He clearly couldn't, he wasn't able, or didn't feel he was able to take the corner. I mean, if he battled on till half time, I don't think it was a massive surprise that he didn't come out for the second half. The only thing I would say with this is that with Bruno Fernandes, you just never know. There was a situation not so long ago, maybe a season or two ago, where he was pictured with wearing one of those air boots, lying on his couch after picking up quite a significant knock in a game, and everyone just assumed that he would miss the next game. And then he turned up away at Tottenham, I think in a 2-2 draw, and created a goal for Cristiano Ronaldo. So, if there's anyone who can battle back very, very quickly from these kind of injuries, it's Bruno Fernandes. And we've seen how available he's made himself for Man United ever since he's joined from Sporting. So he is that type that he will push himself to the limit to make himself available. The danger with these hamstring and these muscle injuries is, every manager will tell you, is that you have to be cautious with it, because the last thing you want is to stick Bruno Fernandes back in straight away and have him pull up after 2 or 3 minutes, and that's him done for 3 or 4 months. That Ruben Amorim just cannot afford that. So it's going to be quite a balancing act for Amorim. In the past, when he's been at United, he's been very, very cautious with the players who've come back from injury. You look at the way that they've managed Luke Shaw, Mason Mount this season. He's taken them out when Mason Mount probably felt he could start games, but Ruben Amorim has said, no, we can't, we can't risk it. You're going to come out and we're going to put you in for the next game. So he has been overly cautious with players, and it'll be very, very interesting to see what he does with Bruno now, because essentially Bruno is his best player and he cannot do without him, but he can't do without him for 2 games. He definitely cannot do without him for 6 months.
Yeah, Janusz, his attendance record, if you like, Bruno Fernandes, when playing football is phenomenal. Flu kept him out of 1 game for Sampdoria. A leg injury kept him out of 2 games in Portugal. He was ill and missed a Man United game in 21-22. He's only missed 2 Manchester United games because of injury, and that was a knee injury a couple of seasons ago. Does that suggest to you that being that type of player and being fitter than the average footballer, it'll be on the lesser end of a kind of severity as far as how many games that he misses, rather than someone who's injury prone and is used to missing games?
Look, we best wait. I agree with Rob. I mean, he's an experienced player. So on one, you can look at it both ways, right? I mean, usually when you feel a tweak like this, and you saw it immediately, right? Yeah. I've played this game. It's impossible. I mean, he's gone for the festive period, if that's the case. On the other hand, he's experienced enough to maybe felt that something was coming and just eased up, right? And he knows his body, he knows himself by now. And maybe it's not something bad. I still think it's irresponsible for Amorim to even allow. I know he's Bruno Fernandes, and I know he's got a lot to say, but it was almost irresponsible for him to keep him on. I mean, I would have taken him immediately out, right? The moment I see it, because as Rob said, I mean, you don't want to take the corner. Before that, remember, he had the 40-yard ball that he played, maybe 1 or 2 more passes, and that sometimes can get worse. So because you can't think about it, and you got to play it. But I'll wait and see, only because of what you both said. I mean, he's come back very, very quickly. I think he's super experienced. So perhaps It's something where he felt it on that it was going to come if he doesn't stop, and he just got himself, in a position where, okay, I'm going to come off, take care of this. I may miss the game, maybe two at most, but be back, and that would be a perfect scenario for. I mean, the best scenario I can think of. If it's a regular tweak, then forget it. It's a month at the very least. I mean, if you want to, such an important player. I mean, after sometimes 2-3 weeks is enough. But as Rob was saying, Amorim is usually careful with his players, and this is not just any player. This is the most important player of Manchester United. So I would say a month if he tweaked it.
Rob, where does this leave Manchester United, who are now 3 points off Chelsea in 4th and only 4 points off Bournemouth in 14th? It's a rather congested middle of the table.
It is, and Amorim has been saying that all season. A couple of defeats and you're right back in sort of 11th, 12th, but a couple of good results and you do get up to sort of 4th and 5th. So the designated aim for Man United at the start of this season was to qualify for Europe. I think top 6 was the aim, which is strange for a Man United manager to say, because it's, they would never say that historically. It was always, we want to win the title or we have to qualify for the Champions League. I think Man United's board and Amorim know that there are 4 or 5 better teams in that league than they are right now. I think if United were to finish 6th and to qualify for the Europa League, that would be deemed at board level as a success. And they are still in and around those places. They do need to have more consistency. They're struggling to put runs of wins together. We saw one earlier in the season where they won 3 on the bounce. They haven't been able to do that since. They've thrown away points at home. Today, I think they get away with today. I think they did okay. I think they more than matched Aston Villa. But it's the games at home, the recent games at home where they've chucked points away that have cost them. Everton, West Ham, Bournemouth, all games really that they should be winning at Old Trafford that they didn't. But I think that if they can carry on winning, if they win more games than they lose between now and the end of the season, they finish 6th. They don't trouble the top of the table. They don't get anywhere near Arsenal and City and Chelsea and Villa. But they don't need to. They need to do enough to finish 7th, 6th or 7th, qualify for the Europa League or qualify for the Conference League, get themselves back into Europe, help the budget with more European games, and then get to the summer and make some real changes, more changes to the squad. They need a midfielder. You saw today that they are in desperate need of a central midfield. I mean, Yanis has mentioned there with England about Elliot Anderson. He is their dream signing. They need that type of player desperately, and it's not going to happen until the summer. So until then, they need to limp forward as best as possible, get into Europe, and then get down to making some proper changes to that squad.
Janusz, we'll finish this off by talking with the same question to you about Aston Villa. Where does this result leave them, knowing fine well that there are 2 games remaining in the Premier League in this calendar year? First of all, are at Chelsea and at Arsenal. If they come through those games without losing, are they genuine title contenders?
Genuine, not genuine. They're title contenders if they get some out of it. This will decide their fate, and maybe others, as I've mentioned. Chelsea and Arsenal. I mean, we'll find out how good they are. This is a unique season already. Even with United, as bad as they've been. I mean, you're talking 4 points away from Champions League, and I think that's going to continue. By the way, right? I mean, in a normal year, if you play like Manchester United or Liverpool when they had that spell, it's done and dusted. Everybody's back in it, and Villa is going to play a key part. So I don't know. Your definition of genuine. I still think they're a bit short, but you never know. If they within touch 1, 2, 3 points after they play Chelsea and Arsenal, sure. I mean, I suspect that they can make some changes in January in the transfer window. Unai Emery has the power to do that, and I think he's been good with that so far. So yeah, I mean, I'm here for it, because if they can beat Manchester United playing as bad as they did today, because they did play badly, and if they go to Chelsea and Arsenal and get 4 points out of that, who are we to say that they have no chance?
Let's end it, Rob, by saying that prior to today, Aston Villa were 40-1 to win the Premier League. They're into 28-1. Simple question to end it for you, Rob. Is it a 3-horse title race in England or a 2-horse title race in England?
2-horse. Arsenal and City.
Janusz has got a 5-horse title race as Liverpool and Chelsea.
Liverpool again back. Liverpool again back.
Yeah, and so are Wolves. Thank you to everybody. And yeah, Aston Villa, title contenders in England. and Hearts still top in Scotland, eh? What a beautiful Sunday. Bye for now.